could you work for someone else?
I'm unemployable.
Why would you describe yourself as utterly unemployable then?
So my first business, when I sold it, I had this awful earnout, and I had a boss for the first time in my life. This poor man. I mean, honestly, it was hell.
That lack of purpose at school, what changed for you?
I did have purpose in some subjects, especially if a teacher had said something derogatory about me to my parents. I was like, well, I'm going to show you.
Prove them wrong.
Prove them wrong.
What was the effect on your self-esteem as you were having those struggles as a teenage girl?
I think there's a big difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. And self-esteem is something I have to work really hard to build. It's attention where you want to put it disorder, for sure. Everybody told me that there was no way that I was going to be able to do this business. No one would give you any money. Even BT wouldn't give me a phone line. You know, if you tell me I can't do something, I'll do it. I'll take photos. I'll send it to you. I'll do it again just to prove it as well. I think that as women, young women especially, it's not easy. It's not impossible. Everything's impossible until someone does it.
There is no need for any person with ADHD to feel any shame.
No.
Hannah Lanel,
Hi.
thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This time, a few hours ago, you had no idea you were going to be doing this.
I was in my pajamas with Alan Smith. It was, looking like it was going to be a great day, meeting some friends for lunch, and then
Proper ADHD.
here I am.
Thank you from us, because, scenario could have been a bit of a challenge. You instantly have come in and talked to us, and we can't wait. We're looking forward to it. Yeah.
So something to clear up first. You were in your pajamas with Alan Smith.
Yes.
Alan Smith is?
Not the Alan Smith. He's the Rhodesian Ridgeback version of Alan Smith. So I rescued a dog a few years ago, and he's the spitting image of Alan Smith.
Just thought we'd better clear that one up
Yeah.
before.
No, I'm glad you did that. Yeah.
As in the former Arsenal, not the former Leeds Alan Smith. It sometimes gets
That was
confusing.
properly cleared up.
Yeah. That's really sorted it out in my head.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Right, let's talk to you. First of all, we'll get to being an entrepreneur and we'll get to all of that career stuff. First of all, let's talk to you about, you got a diagnosis later in life, but not as late as some.
yeah.
And you've 2 children, both of whom now have a diagnosis of ADHD after yours. Now, that's an unusual circle. Out of all of the people that we normally interview, who's parent, the parent comes after the child. It's one of those, I was listening to the psychiatrist go through the list and blah, blah, you flipped. So it'd be good to, before we talk about how you got your diagnosis, how did you getting your diagnosis lead to your kids getting theirs? Because that's an interesting story for sure.
So I'm not sure that mine did lead to the kids getting theirs necessarily. When my daughter was born, it became quite clear to me early on, certainly by the age of 2, that she was possibly on the spectrum. And then you don't diagnose kids before the age of 6. And along the way, it just became more and more evident that she looks nothing like me. She's blonde hair, blue eyes, as white as Casper the Friendly Ghost. But she just, she opens her mouth and people go, oh, I think I knew your mother. And she just had these traits. Like she would play with something, but she couldn't play with it unless she'd taken it apart first and put it back together, which is something that my mother always told me as a kid I did. And I think there's something quite ADHD about the need to know how things work. And she would just be very difficult to sit and focus on stuff unless it was something that she absolutely was into. Give her a packet of Post-it notes and she'd just be all over it for hours. And had this constant sort of drive. And so she went to school early because my ex-husband was French, and in France you go the year you turn 3. She was a late baby, so she went to school at 2 years and 10 months. And we went for our first parents' evening, and it was like, we need to talk about Kevin. I came away and I was like, oh my God, this is awful. And the teacher was like, she won't do it. She's told, she won't sit down. You tell her, Lily, we're doing this. She's like, well, you might be, but I'm over here doing this. And so when we reached the age of 6, we went to see a doctor who diagnosed her straight. Now, in France, ADHD doesn't really exist. And in my family, it certainly doesn't exist either. So we then had to have her diagnosed by 5 different doctors in order for the family to take on board that she was actually ADHD. And my argument was, look, for me, getting through school was the hardest thing I've ever done. So if we can just know what we're up against with this kid, if we can get her through school, this can be a net benefit to her life in a really big way. And I do believe that. It's no superpower, but it has such huge benefits. You just need to understand how to adapt, how to facilitate, how to get kids with ADHD to be able to exist in an environment that's not designed for them. So she was diagnosed first. My son was diagnosed a few months ago.
Okay.
And diagnosed, and I was like, he doesn't have ADHD. He doesn't have it.
Like,
I don't think the child has ADHD. And the doctor's like, Anna, he might not present like you, but he does. And so why would you? And it was funny, I had a very strong reaction to it that I thought, he's so not like me. Like he's walking daddy. He's so laid back. He's horizontal. He doesn't ever have problems making, friends or keeping relationships. He's not, he's just a little bit lazy, but he's a boy. And when he wants to, he pulls it out the bag. And she's like, look, he doesn't have the hyperactivity, but he does have the deficit. And so all of the things that you've done with your daughter. So with Lily, we didn't medicate her at first. We have always reached an age where she could make decisions about that. And she has taken meds and she's not taken meds. And it depends on how she's feeling about it. And I want her very much to be in charge of that herself. So we went through the coaches, the tools, how do you help her with, bands that you're peeing with. We used to have this snail called Hugo that she would do the little thing on her desk for breathing. And, my business is in wellness, so we have all of different coping mechanisms with breath. We have exercise and things like that. So I just never needed to do any of that with him. But now she's like, well, this is just the deficit side. It's just the D.
Yeah, it just shows you that there's it's not clear at all, and there's so much misdiagnosis or people that are in no way thinking that way, and then listening to that, that will get people thinking. You said that the hardest thing you've ever done was getting through school. Can you elaborate on that?
I mean, so my fear for my daughter especially was that she would reach the age of 18 and feel like I felt, which was I was stupid and lazy. And that was the message. It was when I was diagnosed, they asked, did I have any school reports? And I called my mum, and my mother had kept every single school report. And she sent them to me and I read them. And I called her up and I'm like, did you not think there was a problem? Like, how could you, every single term, every single teacher, it says the same thing. Clever girl, potentially, if she ever applied herself. Can't sit still, class clown, disruptive, doesn't not interested in making an effort. And it was like clawing my way through school. I really struggled, but I knew it. I just couldn't get it out in exams, and I couldn't be relied upon to do my homework without somebody standing over me. And my parents just weren't those parents.
Did you have no purpose to it? Because we know you now as an entrepreneur, and that's how we've been introduced. I should have made that clear earlier, actually, for you not even being prepared to be sitting here now. It was the entrepreneur community through Frankie James and Howells that said, you must speak to Hannah. And then in true ADHD style, you're like, I'm here, I'm coming. So you look at that element of misunderstood, lazy, not interested at school. You're the person that only a couple of hours ago is like, I'm going to come along and sit in this chair. Massive drive, commitment. So that lack of purpose at school, what changed for you?
So I don't know. So I did have purpose in some subjects, especially if a teacher had said something derogatory about me to my parents. I was like, well, I'm going to show you.
Prove them wrong.
Prove them wrong. So I think that's been a big theme throughout my life. And in terms of what changed for life, I mean, I went to uni at 18. I hadn't done brilliantly in my A-levels, but I had been able to talk my way into the uni that I wanted to go to. And I had started a business whilst I was there in my first term. And so I was then faced with this decision. Do I stay? Do I go? Do I stay? And yeah, it's a tension where you want to put it disorder for sure. And everybody told me that there was no way that I was going to be able to do this business. No one would give you any money. Even BT wouldn't give me a phone line, and there's a certain drive that comes from people telling me that I can't do something for sure. And so I think that that's probably been.
I love that you channeled that.
Yeah.
Because some people would fall away from that. They'd be sort of be disenchanted and lose interest. You're like, well, I'll show you.
That's it. It's something. If you tell me I can't do something, I'll do it. I'll take photos. I'll send it to you. I'll do it again just to prove it as well. And it's a really, I wish I wasn't like that. I really do.
I know, it's very endearing to listen to, and I'm sure it's...
Being driven and having motivation is certainly not a bad thing. Let me just, there's going to be young women, if I may, you're at an age where there's going to be a generation now following you of women who are going through some of the struggles that you've articulated you've had. And one of the missions we're on, if we can have a mission, it is to help people understand themselves and should change their narrative from you can't, you won't, you shan't, you know, and you talked about feeling you were stupid. And something to pick on before I probe a question is you saying I was very, very clever at it, but I couldn't get it down in an exam. You know, that's something we come back to time and time again with people in the ADHD community. A grade conversation about a subject and a D grade in the exam, and we don't recognise that gap enough in the system. You're going through school, you've got these challenges, yet you're as bright as a button, and here you are living the epitome of that success. What was the effect on your self-esteem? Because there will be other girls now thinking about their own self-esteem. What was the effect on your self-esteem as you were having those struggles as a teenage girl?
I don't have self-esteem, even today. I think there's a big difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. And self-esteem is something I have to work really hard to build. And it doesn't matter whatever successes you have or what success is to you. It's nothing's ever enough. Nothing's ever enough to fill that gap. And that gap was 18 years in formation and more. And so that's why I'm saying, you know, my protective element for my kids is I will not have them reach the age where they do not have a very strong core of self-belief and self-esteem. And I was named after my great-grandmother who, she made chains and nails in the Black Country. And we were just talking about her earlier. She retired 4 times, and finally at 85 they were like, Annie, I think you need to go home, love. And she always said to me, everything's impossible until someone does it. And that, I think, is something that I definitely channeled over that's what I try to channel today, over than you're stupid and lazy. But if something goes wrong, I go straight back to you're stupid and lazy. And I think that as women, young women especially, it's not easy. It's not impossible, but it's not easy.
Everything's impossible till someone does it. You've just given us a brilliant soundbite for when this goes out, that's for sure. And then you couple that with perhaps the impulsivity of ADHD to tackle what hasn't been done before, to take on the challenge. You told me this can't be done, I'm going to show you. That would say to other people that there is a confidence about you, but you've articulated a lack of self-belief there. And when you said that, you slipped into a real heartfelt, emotive state there for a minute when you said, I don't have that self-esteem. So where's your resilience come from?
I think it's driven by fear in the main. I think that the lack of self-esteem means you're constantly driven by a fear of being found out or exposed in some way. And that then drives resilience. And it's funny because I don't think of myself as resilient, but if you asked any number of my friends, it's probably one of the top adjectives that they'd use to describe me, but it's not a word that I would associate with myself at all. It's I don't want to be resilient, actually. I'd really rather not.
Actually, how much of the kind of setting up your own business that is around wellness and helping others is almost sort of that sort of almost a cry for help and what wasn't there for you? And I guess almost an education process of learning all of that for yourself, for coping mechanisms, for, you know, the masking that was probably going on at the time to try and be more authentically you. How much of that was the why?
All of it. And I think it's the why in almost everything I do in life. I do have a need to make good of something bad. So it definitely drives, you know, my business helps people, but my business also helps the people that work for it. So we have young people who come in and work for us who they almost always have a side hustle, and the business actively supports that side hustle. So if they're a musician and they do a gig, everybody goes to the gig. If we can help them with our network to introduce them to people, to help them like Darkers or somebody like that, we will a proper community. And then the community, it naturally spreads, and that I think I have little pockets of those communities, the one with Helen and Frankie.
Well, that's literally what's brought you here today. I was
Yeah.
just literally thinking how that's kind of manifested into a full-scale conversation back to what you're putting out, you are actually getting back. And that girl that was, dare I say, craving knowledge, craving a community, running from a certain amount of fear. Do you got any kind of contentment without any arrogance? Clearly, is there any acknowledgement of what you have done and what you are doing sitting here now?
I'm not very good at acknowledging what I have done. What I am doing, I think I acknowledge it fulfills me in a very deep way now.
Yeah.
Very deep way. And helping young women make their way through their journeys, whether it be in a steady standard career or it be setting up their own businesses. I do an awful lot of mentoring. And I also work with a charity that helps girls in prison, which is one of the best things that I do. My daughter and I had a conversation about it the other day. She's like, why do you do all of this? Like, honestly, you just sit down. And I said, I could, but...
Sounds exhausted being around you.
Yeah,
I get it.
I could, but I have a need to do it. That it's not something I need to shout about. It's just something that it gives me a very deep sense of fulfillment. I'm not sure it's something that I would go and, hang my hat on, because it's not that for me. It's not about that, but it's all of my why.
In that wellness space and that knowledge you've got now and the information you're giving to other people, what works for you to actually calm and manage your own ADHD?
I'm terrible at that.
I thought you'd say that.
Yeah, really bad.
But you could tell me exactly what I should.
Oh, 100%. I can tell you what to eat, how to sleep, how to exercise, and I'm terrible at it. I try to get better. So now I'm a poetry geek, a closet poetry geek. I've only just come out of the closet recently, but I write poetry and I paint and I go for a run with Alan, and that's the only, when I remember that that's what I need to do. And I try and eat, because I forget to eat, I'll forget to sleep, I'll forget to go to the toilet, all of the classic stuff. And then I have to go, hold on, let's just bring it down.
Bring it back to being present.
Yeah.
Let's change the optics for a second then. You're an entrepreneur, you've built a business, successful business, and it's all about well-being and helping other people. Could you work for someone else?
I'm unemployable.
I suspected an answer along those lines, perhaps not as graphically illustrated in so few words.
A job. I really would if anyone wants to employ me. Take me.
Why would you describe yourself as utterly unemployable then?
So my first business, when I sold it, I had this awful earnout, and I had a boss for the first time in my life. This poor man. I mean, honestly, it was hell. It was like, he'd never experienced anything like me, and I'd never really experienced what it was. I mean, I'd worked in a cafe or a shop, but not in a very formal environment. I'm not politically correct. I can't be relied upon to say something normal. I will go out of my way, and then at the same time I'll totally forget that I was supposed to be in the board meeting on Tuesday at 10 a.m. It's not, I don't think that a structured formal employment environment would work for me. But I'd one day that feeling of like, a steady paycheck maybe would be
not
great.
Having to carry it all on behalf of other people.
Yeah. The sense of responsibility, I think, is one of the things that people forget to talk about in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And that's really hard.
So ADHD Hannah.
Yeah.
What's she like to work for?
Oh, well, gosh, I'm trying to think about what my team would say. Probably a nightmare, number one, but also I think that people don't leave. So when they come and work for me, they don't go away. So there must be something good, right?
Yeah.
I take care of them. I think I give them opportunities that probably other people wouldn't, because maybe their CV doesn't say they can do the job, but I think if somebody wants to do it, what harm is there in letting them have a go? Mm-hmm. And I really take care of myself, really take care of my team. And I think that they find something more. They go home with more than a paycheck, for sure.
When you look at the skills you've got and then the sort of way you built a team, and I relate this to me a little bit as well, like I'm terrible at admin. So like, missing the board meeting at 10 o'clock on Tuesday and then remembering at 3 o'clock and then seeing the message, what it might be. How have you managed that side of things? Because clearly your business is successful. You've got a track record of what you're doing. You've previously exited business and so on. But I'm interested in how you sort of recognize certain things where you needed to delegate and how you've gone about that?
You have to have complete transparency with some amazing people who've helped me. Like my assistant was actually our babysitter from down the road, who just wanted, and she was a tutor, she wanted a career change. And so she knows me and she understands me, but she has full access to my email, full access to social, everything, because, you know, if somebody sends me a message that needs to be answered, and I'm probably not going to see it. So I do think that today also there are a number of apps and there's lots of different systems and processes that you can put in place, or rather she's put in place around me, which is really helpful. And then it's get an accountant and a bookkeeper and somebody who can, you know, the stuff that's the non-negotiables in terms of admin. But I now have a little pattern that I do where I sit down on a Sunday and I look at the diary for the next week, which I never used to do. And then I always try and sit down the night before and look at what's coming ahead the next day. Never used to do that either. And those are things that I've learned from my daughter and from her methods of coping with ADHD. So it's that time is a very tricky thing for me to manage, and people do know that. So she will tell me that a meeting is half an hour earlier than it actually is, because, you know, I only have two different times. I've got right now and not now, and getting from not now to right now can be a tricky scenario where I will think I can add a whole day in that process, and she'll be like, scratch. So I think there's very important, the most important thing about having ADHD as a business owner is putting people in place around you who are tolerant, respectful, and facilitating you in the right way.
When we talk, it's an amazing conversation, because this is like the 101 of how to be an entrepreneur with ADHD, as opposed to I am an entrepreneur with ADHD. Does that make sense? The sort of coping mechanisms to be successful.
When it's under the bonnet.
Yeah. And what makes an entrepreneur with ADHD tick? And there's something in that. When you look back and we talk about impairment with ADHD, before you had your diagnosis, before you understood yourself as well as you do now, and you clearly have a fantastic understanding of that sense of self, what were the hardest things that you were dealing with now when you look back that you didn't know how to deal with?
So the self-esteem thing, we'll go back to that, because I think that's probably the core of everything. The hardest thing to deal with was a constant feeling of like, why can't I do this? Everyone else can behave in this way. Everyone else can manage this, but why can't I? Why am I always falling down on this stuff? And a huge imposter syndrome, being very young in business and thinking, I am going to be found out. They're going to find out tomorrow that actually what I've done is this, and that's not what they thought they were buying in, you know, the business. And that led to me having a very big addiction problem. I had a huge drug habit, and no one would have known. Super, super highly functioning. And it obviously was very detrimental to my life. So not only did I have the ADHD to try and get over, I then was chucking, you know, hurdles all the way. Like it's the most ridiculous thing to do, but I somehow convinced myself that without that, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get through a day. I couldn't function. I couldn't be creative. I couldn't, because of the fact that I had this whole sense of you're stupid and lazy. And I felt like the drugs then gave me the ability to do this stuff. And
Falsely,
totally.
Can I explore with you what it was you were addicted to?
So I was a crack addict.
Wow.
Yeah.
And fully functioning?
Fully. Had built and sold a business, like fully functioning, yeah.
You're not the first person that sat in front of me and said that. You'll be aware of that. But I think if you don't mind, I'm just going to explore that for a second, because if you didn't understand your ADHD and you didn't understand what the brain needed, but you found something that would give you that clarity, that purpose, you're going to take it. It's a different form of addiction to a classic street addiction, isn't it? It is perhaps, it's fair to say, an addiction to be able to perform.
Yeah.
and that's the route, as opposed to a bottle of medicine that's kept in the pill cabinets. It's crack cocaine. And was there a sense of shame in those days, or do you about that?
Huge, yeah.
And how did you deal with that?
Not well, because that's so. The shame leads you further into addiction. And I don't believe that the cure for addiction is sobriety or abstinence. It's not about that. It's about connection, and shame keeps you isolated. And so I would completely isolate myself. It leads you to, the whole not asking for help thing. You're in a shame spiral all the time.
You're left with the voices in your head, right?
Totally. And then you're telling yourself, I should be bigger than this. I should be able to stop doing this. I should have enough willpower to stop doing
this. The shoulda squad is useless though, isn't it?
It's terrible. It's terrible.
So how did you turn that around?
So I was going to work one day, and I got on the tube to go to work, and the doors beeped, and I bolted off the train and bolted out of the station, and I took a taxi to work, which was in King's Cross, and I was working in West Kensington, so never do that. And I spent the whole day not really realising that there was nobody else in the office. And then we used to have these big screens everywhere, and the ticker tape was going across Sky News, and it said, Plank, call P*** now. Now, my family call me Plank, as in thick as two short planks. Great nickname. And I call my sister Piss. And so obviously they had, and I was like, Piss, like, and I look around and realise there's nobody there. And go off on a hunt for somebody, and I finally found out FD, and I'm like, what's happened? And he's like, where have you been? Like, they bombed the tubes, and the minute he said it, I knew. And I walked back home, and the BBC was on, and they had this little infographic, and it was the first day that I realised that tubes have numbers like buses do. Because I've been standing right at the front of the platform, and this infographic basically told me that I had got off the Piccadilly line train that got bombed. And I suddenly had this weight of guilt mixed with this massive relief, like almost a euphoric, I've cheated death, but 26 other people on that carriage I didn't take with me. And so I was a mess. And I had been seeing a psychiatrist in a clinic in Marylebone for some time, because my mental health was just shot to pieces, obviously. And I called him up and I said, right, I'm coming in. And I packed a bag and I walked to the rehab centre, and I went into rehab that day. And on the 7th of, I'm going to cry.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's 20 years on the 7th of July that I've been clean for 20 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's always a day that's mixed with guilt and a sense of massive achievement. And when I went in that day, they said to me, right, you've got to surrender. And I said, no. So why would I want to surrender? I need all of my strength. I need all of my power. I'm not surrendering to anything. And I refused to do it in the way that they wanted me to go about it. I said, don't tell me I'm going to relapse. Why are you going to tell me that I'm going to go and do this and then I'm going to fail? It's ridiculous. I said, I'm not going to, why would I follow your program if relapse is part of the journey? I mean, this is just ludicrous.
Yeah, if you're in, you're in.
I mean, it's like, I've made a decision. And they said, no, you're going to go every day, Hannah. It's like walking to a boxing ring and you're going to be fighting Muhammad Ali. And I'm like, well, you never know. Maybe he's having an off day. And I am going to do this. And I did it my way. I didn't necessarily follow all of the 12 steps, because some of them I really think actually feed the shame. They feed shame. You need to be getting rid of the shame. I did the 90 meetings in 90 days, and I live in Notting Hill. And honestly, there are a bunch of junkies that you don't want to necessarily listen to moan, and they're the ones that live in Notting Hill. That sounds so terrible when I say it out loud, but it's like this very entitled people. So I'm getting nothing from this. And so I decided to do it my way, which is to use my experiences to then go and help other people who have addictions. And it's And I've been to Sierra Leone and worked with child soldiers in Liberia. I've worked with girls who are in rehab who get to take their babies with them. I go into prisons. It's something that I needed to make good on it in my own way. And
it's really YOLO. You only live once there, isn't it? From that realization of what happened. I mean, to the point where I was almost being quite trivial about you coming today. But I imagine there's a decision-making process for you now where you grab opportunity. I think we feel very privileged having you here. Like, the opportunity comes up if someone through illness couldn't make a film, and then we put out a message to a community, and you go, I'm coming, I'm having that, I'm grabbing it, which I find fascinating as well, because of that, what you say is a lack of self-esteem. But that there are people we all know that we go, well, I've never met them before. There's cameras, it's a TV program. Oh, I need a lead-in time to this. Can we have a meeting first? You're in, straight in, and then you are phenomenal to talk with. What you just showed of us is just,
very, very
powerful. It's powerful for us, let alone anyone watching and listening.
I just think that no one would have thought that somebody who presents like me would have been a crack addict. No one.
Well, that's the point, and I'm so glad that you had the moral courage to take the conversation there, because clinically, my team work with a lot of people who've been through that exact same journey. And I think we've all got a responsibility to let the audience watching this to know that if that's your journey that you're on at the moment, you can come through it, and you can come through it with absolute clarity and success. And I think as a learning point there's also something about you didn't fit in that classic journey to sobriety because your ADHD wasn't going to let you fit into that classic journey of sobriety. And I've argued for 20 odd years the pathway to being clean for a person with ADHD is very different to a pathway to clean for a person who is not ADHD, because the drivers are different that have got you there. So we shouldn't accept that we need the same coping mechanisms to prevent those drivers. We need to we talk about change the narrative. One of the narratives we definitely need to change is how a person with ADHD gets to the point of addiction, because every person with ADHD will be addicted to something.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, if they're addicted to running around the park, that's all well and good. But if they're addicted to crack cocaine, that's not sustainable and not healthy. And you've taken us into a place there today as an incredibly successful, wonderful woman to sit there. And I think that's one of the most powerful exposés of struggle I've ever witnessed in this program. And I felt emotional with you as you explored that. And I think there'll be a lot of people who will resonate with what you said. And I think we'll get a lot of new learning out of listening to your journey. And I said it just before, but I'm really grateful you took that step and exposed that. Because I think a lot of people will benefit from it in the context of ADHD and being a woman and being successful and being a really nice person to be with. And I think you're living proof that change can happen.
Change can happen. Everything is impossible until someone does it, right? And it's, for me, one of the things that I always have in the back of my mind is this need that I have to change the way we go about talking about addiction, the way we treat addiction, and specifically for people with ADHD, because the comorbidity is just massive. And I feel like the whole narrative that we have, the whole narrative we have around addiction is very similar to this narrative of ADHD. It's like, well, pull yourself together.
Yeah. You chose to take drugs.
Exactly. It's always your choice, isn't it? Yeah. Right. And there's, you have, well, why would you say yes to that? Why did you take it in the first place when you know there's this chemical claw in drugs? There's no chemical claw in drugs. If there were, you wouldn't go into hospital and have a pain relief. They give you morphine. You'd walk out a junkie, right? It's a complete fallacy. And yet we have this message around it. And it's the same with ADHD. It's like, it's your fault. It's your fault. And it's the same with people who are overweight, or the same with people.
Why did you point at me?
That's funny.
We've had that conversation. Look, we could talk for absolute hours. Just to reinforce something, there is no need for any person with ADHD to feel any shame.
No.
And we can help people build themselves into being more resilient, to being better people, happier people, and you've taken us both on a journey this afternoon, and I think other people will follow on that journey. So, Hannah, thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.